Hello, and thank you for joining us for this talk about WebAssembly, WASM, and its associated technologies which are advancing web applications and microservices. My name is Nikki Sonpar, and I'll be your guide. Let's get started. So let's start at the beginning. What is WASM? WASM and WASMCloud are standards and techniques for the development and the deployment of web applications and microservices. These new standards enable the developer to focus on their core application logic and move away from the complexities of deployment and the underlying infrastructure. Furthermore, abstracting the runtime environment allows you to run WASM applications and microservices on an incredible array of devices anywhere across the globe. Basically, if you can run a browser, you can run a WASM application. To fully appreciate WASM's role in the technology landscape, let's step back a little to see how software development has evolved. You'll see that CPU and hardware have improved at a mind-boggling rate. Think about Moore's Law. If you look at the infrastructure, that has also improved tremendously. Think of all the networking advancements we've had. Think of the cloud infrastructure that exists today. However, application management still seems to be the fly in the ointment. It creates an incredible amount of development overhead, oftentimes has very complex configurations, and arguably is one of the biggest risks to the software industry. This is where WASM comes in. WASM is an industry standard for secure runtime of platform-independent applications. The runtime essentially exists in a browser, which means any device that can run a modern browser can run a WASM application. No additional runtime environment needs to be installed. The application runs in a secure sandbox. This means memory is locked down, and by default, the application has no access to the underlying system. Finally, the application is represented by an assembly file. Again, this file is platform independent, so the same file can be run on any browser, on any operating system, on any device. Now let's add the idea of WASMCloud. WASMCloud adds a few key elements to this infrastructure. The first is the idea of a provider. A provider for this discussion can be thought of as a service provider. The next element is an actor. For this discussion, let's think of an actor as a client. The third element, which is critical, is that of a lattice. The lattice uses a contract which is defined between the actor and the provider to route messages from the actor to the provider that can service the request. Now, it's also important to notice what's not in this picture. There are no web servers, there's no installed runtime, there's no complex configuration. With a few simple concepts, WASM and WASMCloud have made application deployment much, much easier. Now let's look at WASMCloud at the macro level. In this diagram, we have the provider deployed in multiple clouds and on-premises. It doesn't matter which vendor it is. It doesn't matter which operating system it is. As long as they can run the WASM runtime, they can support the provider. We also have multiple actors. Again, these are heterogeneous devices. As long as they can run a browser, they can run the actor. Let's assume that this device connects to the green cloud. And let's assume, for discussion's sake, that that connection is fairly stable. However, at some point, that green cloud suffers an outage. The lattice recognizes the outage. The lattice then finds another provider which satisfies the contract and reroutes the actor to that other provider, in this case on premises. From the perspective of the actor, they don't know, nor do they care, that there was an outage or that the provider has changed. This is why we believe WASM Cloud brings unparalleled uptime and resilience to WASM applications. As you can tell, we're very excited about WASM and WASMCloud. We believe that WASM and WASMCloud is one of the next big steps in software development. However, it's still early days. New standards are still being written and new implementations are still occurring. We encourage you to join us. Thank you for your time and happy computing.